On paper, WWE Crown Jewel 2023 was shaping up to be one of the best WWE Premium Live events of the entire year. I mean, if you looked at that match card alone, you wouldn't be crazy to think that that looked like a WrestleMania Night 1 or WrestleMania Night 2 type of card. But not only did the matches look amazing, but it really looked like the WWE was poised to make some really big narrative decisions that could really fundamentally change WWE narrative and WWE television for the foreseeable future here. But ultimately, the WWE ended up being very safe with its booking decisions, which ultimately meant that the show ended up being a little bit lackluster and not incredibly memorable. Now, the matches weren't bad per se. Again, it's just the lack of surprises, the lack of major decisions that really make this show feel a little bit underwhelming. I do have a full review of the show that I made immediately after the show ended, so if you want a bit more raw and unfiltered emotions and opinions, go ahead and check that out. But what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be tier ranking all of the matches and segments of WWE Crown Jewel, and we're going to rank them from Hall of Fame all the way down to trash. And hey, as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I'm confident you're going to fall in love with this YouTube channel because we upload daily wrestling content. And if you notice, this video doesn't have all the fun, fancy editing things because my editor got away, and I will find him. And when I do, it's over for you. All right, let's jump into it. The match that, in my opinion, kind of shockingly opened the show. I really thought that this was going to go on later. That being Seth freaking Rollins versus Drew McIntyre for the World Heavyweight Championship. And I finally cracked the code. I have cracked the code as to why I always pick Seth Rollins to lose and why I want Seth Rollins to drop this championship. And that's because the WWE keeps booking storylines and matches against guys that we want to see win the big one. I want to see Finn Balor finally get his major world championship. I wanted to see Nakamura finally break through on the main roster, and I wanted to see Drew McIntyre finally celebrate in front of a major crowd. So WWE hasn't been doing Seth Rollins any favors by booking him against fan darlings that we want to see succeed over him. So yeah, I finally cracked the code. I finally know and truly understand why it is that I haven't loved Seth Rollins' title reign. It's just because I want to consistently see him lose to the guy that he's going up against. And today was no different. I really thought that they were going to pull the trigger on Drew McIntyre because I picked Drew McIntyre to win here. The match itself, the actual in-ring work, I thought was really, really good. I think it was Seth Rollins' best title defense in terms of in-ring work rate. I think it's better than any of the matches that he had with Nakamura, with the exception, of course, of the last man standing match, but that has so much more to it than just like an in-ring bout. I think it was better than every match that he had with Finn Balor. These guys clearly just have really great chemistry, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last time that we see Seth freaking Rollins take on Drew McIntyre. One of the things that I'll note that I thought was really weird was the fact that Drew McIntyre came out after Seth Rollins, really hinting at the fact that he was probably going to have either a special entrance or maybe coming out to Broken Dreams, but that just didn't end up being the case. So it was a little bit of a weird situation there that left a lot of fans feeling a little bit, I don't know, underwhelmed or maybe a little bit bewitched and bamboozled there. But again, I thought that the match was really, really good, but I think what hurt it was the decision, because I really felt like it was the right time to pull the trigger on Drew McIntyre, although I might end up looking back on this show, maybe at Survivor Series or the Royal Rumble, if they've built Drew McIntyre to like a level of monster heeldom that maybe that's when he should be winning the World Championship, and maybe I'm wrong here, but to me, it still feels like, at least as of the making of this video, like it was the right time to pull the trigger on Drew McIntyre, and they ultimately didn't, and yeah, I didn't love the end result, even though the match itself was actually really, really good. But I'm not going to knock down the match any sort of pegs in tier ranking simply because I didn't love the decision for Seth Rollins to win, because the match objectively was very good. And like I said, Seth Rollins' best title defense in terms of in-ring work rate. So I'm going to be putting Seth Rollins versus Drew McIntyre into the great category, even though I didn't love the decision to have Seth Rollins win this. Next up, let's go to the Fatal 5-Way for the Women's World title between Rhea Ripley, Shayna Baszler, Raquel Rodriguez, Nia Jax, and Zoe Stark. I'm going to talk about this in just a second, but the audience did this match absolutely no favors. The Saudi crowd did not give two flying Fs about any of the women's matches. They didn't care about Rhea Ripley. They didn't care about Nia Jax. They didn't care about Shayna Baszler. They didn't care about any of the women in this match. They didn't care for their entrances, for their cool moves. Here's the thing. If you were just watching this match in audio only, you would think that this match was an absolute stinker with how little the Saudi audience reacted to them. This match was fantastic. I think it's just as good as Drew McIntyre versus Seth Rollins in terms of in-ring work rate. All women looked great in this. They all accomplished their goal of making themselves look like a badass, the badass woman of Monday Night Raw. They all had great spots. One of my favorite spots being that Zoe Stark off the top rope onto the camera, onto all the women. We also had a great Shayna Baszler moment where she had 3 of the 4 women in a submission. That was pretty sweet. And ultimately, like, Rhea Ripley won with a really cool off the top rope riptide on top of like everybody. So this match had some really great spots and all of the women looked great, but the Saudi audience couldn't care less. So I'm going to talk about the Saudi audience here in just a second, but I'm not going to let the Saudi audience impact the fact that this was objectively a really good match. This goes into the great category. Now we're going to tier rank the Saudi Arabian audience. And I've been tier ranking these audiences recently in terms of like how excitable they are, how much noise they made, etc., etc. And I think there's a lot of expectations nowadays in terms of fan engagement and how loud they are, especially since the Puerto Rican crowd, the London crowd, the Wales crowd. So we expect a lot now from international audiences, and whether they like it or not, we expect a lot from the Saudi audience as well now. And traditionally, the Saudi Arabian audience has been like afraid to make noise. In like the early years of WWE Premium Live events there, they were just not very excitable. Recently, they've gotten so much better. They've gotten a lot more excitable. They've picked their favorites and they've really fallen in love with certain characters within the WWE and made them feel like megastars on their shows. I will say, if I compare this to other Saudi crowds, this was one of the best Saudi Arabian crowds that we've had, probably bar none. But again, I think it's lackluster compared to some of the other crowds that we've had this year at WWE Premium Live events. I will note that they were actually like pretty excitable throughout most of the entire show. We're going to talk about this in just a second, but they were the most loud for Cody Rhodes. My goodness, do they love Cody Rhodes. And of course, LA Knight. Those two guys were being treated like absolute megastars by the Saudi audience. Where the Saudi audience let the entire planet down was their treatment and their lack of interest in any way, shape, or form in any of the women's matches. It was borderline embarrassing, right? That you'd have men's match, excitement, women's match, literally no one giving a single F about what's going on in the ring, and then right back to caring about the show. Here's the thing. I know that there's a cultural divide here, but if you aren't willing to accept the women's aspect, then you shouldn't get these shows, period, because that's just part of the deal. That's part of the game. Women's wrestling is the best that it's ever been, and if you don't want to care about it, then you shouldn't get any of these shows. Obviously, I'm not the one making these financial decisions. The WWE is, and they're getting a ton of money for this, but if you're not going to care about the women's matches, in my eyes and in the international eyes, in terms of audiences that have been watching the Saudi audience evolve, like, we've been severely let down by you, and you gotta show a little bit of love, a little bit of appreciation for the women's matches, because you did not this show. And it wasn't just the women's fatal 5-way. We're going to talk about the women's match between Io Sky and Bianca Belair and the major return that happened there that clearly should not have happened at Saudi Arabia, because they did not give a fuck about the return of that person that we're going to talk in just a second. So the Saudi audience, because of your treatment of the women's matches, this is going to give me some hate, but I'm putting you in the trash category. It was just such a bad look for you guys. I'm glad that you made LA Knight feel like a megastar. That's great, but he's a megastar everywhere that he goes. I think you had an opportunity to really differentiate yourself and really remove a stigma that exists with the Saudi Arabian crowd regarding women, and you didn't do yourselves any favors. Trash. This video is going to get bombarded with a lot of negative comments because of what I just said, but I'm sticking by it, and I'm gonna die on this hill. Oh crap, I forgot about the pre-show. Sami Zayn versus JD McDonough. Yeah, it was pretty good. Like, the match was actually like pretty decent. The work rate was good. JD McDonough was selling his ass off for Sami Zayn. It was a pretty good pre-show match. I want to see pre-show matches come back if they're gonna be to the quality of that. So yeah, I'm gonna put it into the good category. Sure. Next up, let's look at Solo Sikoa versus John Cena. And I don't know that we fully know the major ramifications of this match. If this was John Cena's retirement match, then this is going to go down as a really important match in the zeitgeist and the history books of the WWE. But I'm only going to talk about it based on like the information that I have right now and how the match actually was. Because here's the thing, like, no one was expecting John Cena to put on more than a 5-minute match, and this went on for 60 16 minutes. 16 minutes between a John Cena that is well past his prime versus a Solo Sikoa that isn't necessarily a Daniel Bryan type that could carry John Cena to a 5-star match. So I knew what kind of match we were going to get, and I think we got exactly that. This match was slow. It didn't have any sort of like really excitable moments, and it really was just a buildup for the last 5 minutes, which is where Solo Sikoa absolutely annihilated John Cena. So the match itself, really, like, if I'm just being super bland and objective about it, was very meh, borderline trash. However, those last 5 minutes had a very specific goal and a very specific narrative, which was one, to destroy John Cena and have him be destroyed at the hands of the new monster of the WWE in Solo Sikoa. And in that regard, it absolutely hit every single note that it needed to hit. Because Solo Sikoa in those last 5 minutes came out looking like one of the scariest dudes that the WWE has had in a very, very long time. And I think it also delivered in terms of its goal of making us feel sad, sympathetic, and just bummed out over the treatment of John Cena and what John Cena has become. So in terms of the emotions that it was trying to elicit, this match like hit it out of the park. Still, in comparison to the actual in-ring work, I can't really go above meh because the match was very, very meh, but I gotta give them kudos in terms of what they were trying to accomplish, which is, again, to make us feel emotional, and 2, to make Solo feel like a monster, and I think it did all of those things. Next up, let's look at Rey Mysterio versus Logan Paul for the WWE United States Championship. And although I feel like the result was predictable, which was Logan Paul winning the United States Championship, I'm still glad that they made that call, and it was really the only match that had a major booking decision that severely changes the narrative of WWE television, again, aside from the last women's match that we'll talk about in just a second. And the show needed more of this. It needed more bold decisions so that we can come out of Crown Jewel excited for the next episode of Monday Night Raw, which I don't think that we got that, hey, oh my God, I have to tune in to Monday Night Raw type of moment at Crown Jewel. This is maybe the closest one to that. The match was a little bit confusing in terms of the actual in-ring choreography because these two guys are dynamite in the ring. Their moveset is designed to get people off of their seat and get them excited, and yet the first half of the match was not that. It was a lot of rest holds, a lot of submissions, and it wasn't until the back half of the match where it started to really become a Rey Mysterio versus Logan Paul match. Shout out to Logan Paul for being a veteran and saving Rey Mysterio from landing on the top of his head. It was just so cool to see Logan Paul have those instincts, an instinct that you would only really see a veteran have at this point in his career. He has no business having those instincts, and yet he does. I love the booking decision to have Logan Paul come out as the United States champion. I love the ending sequence between those two when Logan Paul was trying to do the, hey Ray, I love you so much, and Ray's like, dude, you cheated, you know what you did? And Logan goes, I don't know what you're talking about, it was fair and square. So I love that type of character work between the two even after the match. Overall, I'm gonna say that Logan Paul versus Rey Mysterio, like, I was ultimately a little bit let down in terms of like the actual in-ring match. I feel like it could have been so much better, but I was really happy with the result. This goes into the good category for me. Next up, let's look at Cody Rhodes versus Damian Priest. And if it wasn't for the Crown Jewel stage and the Crown Jewel audience, I wouldn't be surprised if you thought that this was just a recap of Monday Night Raw, because it really just felt like a Monday Night Raw segment. It felt exactly like something that we've seen numerous times over and over again, except just at a bigger stage. So it was pretty lame in that regard. The match was fine, but I don't think that fine justifies just giving us something that we could have easily had on Monday Night Raw. Like, literally every single beat was something that we've seen in Monday Night Raw. Judgment Day comes out, and then Jey Uso helps and makes the save, and then Cody Rhodes ends up overcoming the odds and beating Damian Priest. It was lame. I didn't like it. I thought it was lazy. I think that's the best way to put it. I think it's just lazy, and I think it's just an excuse to have Cody Rhodes on the show, which he deserves to be on the show, but you should have just made this another match for the tag titles if they were all already in the building in the first place. I'm gonna put this match into the trash category. It had no business being on this show in any way, shape, or form. After the Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre match, we had Damian Priest come out and try and cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase on Seth Rollins, and I was sold. I was certain that this was going to happen, and then hijinks and shenanigans happened. Sami Zayn came out during the cash-in, stole the briefcase, and ran through the crowd. Look, I'm all for fun, silly games like this, but I don't know. I feel like it's a disservice to do it on such a major show, such a major platform like Crown Jewel. I feel like you're making Damian Priest look silly and dumb. The fact that he's being bullied by Sami Zayn is laughable. You're belittling the importance of the Money in the Bank briefcase with all of these faux cash-ins. I think it's dumb. I don't like it. Like, if you're gonna cash in, cash in. If that's not the plan, then hide it. Out of sight, out of mind is better. Look at not Seth Rollins. Actually, Seth Rollins is a good example, but look at also Dolph Ziggler. Out of sight, out of mind, cashing in when it's actually time, and then we'll care, because this is just, it's starting to become annoying. I'm going to put the cash in into the meh category. Yeah, I was just so underwhelmed by this. It's a bizarre choice to me. Now let's look at the Miz TV segment with guest Ibrahim Al-Hajjaj, who is a movie star from Saudi Arabia. I'm actually a lot more forgiving of this segment than most people, because I recognize that this segment was not for me, a typical Western, Canadian, American, European audience. This was a segment that was designed for the people in the audience and the people of Saudi Arabia. The people in Saudi Arabia in the arena seem to love the guy, so good on them. I don't know who he is, so like, I wasn't emotionally invested in this, so I was more emotionally invested in the Miz and Grayson Waller. Thought it was cool to see Grayson Waller there. It's interesting seeing the Miz as a babyface. I am happy to report that it seems like it's still the same Miz, just now doing his dastardly, evil, funny things against other bad guys, which that's a good thing. Overall, like it was a Miz TV segment. It's not gonna go higher than meh. It wasn't, like the Gunther segment, for example. This is like a very run-of-the-mill segment. I'm not gonna put it in trash simply because I don't know who that is. I recognize that segment was not for me, but in terms of the energy and the people that were involved that I know, like the Miz and Grayson Waller, it escapes the trash category. It goes into meh. Next up, we have the Women's WWE Championship match between Io Sky and Bianca Belair. And again, similar to the Women's Fatal 5-Way, had you watched this match on silent, you wouldn't have thought that there was even a match going on, because there was no one making any noise. We even had the return, the major WWE return of Japanese megastar Kairi Sane, and no one cared. Like, I don't understand the WWE's decision to have Kairi Sane return to this crowd. This crowd didn't care. And if they don't care about women's wrestling, that's one thing. But if you know that they don't care about women's wrestling, then why are you going to have the biggest women's return that we've had in a really, really long time happen in front of this crowd? This crowd didn't deserve Kairi Sane debuting there. This crowd did not deserve this major return. Kairi Sane should have had her return either on Friday Night SmackDown or in Chicago at Survivor Series. However, the match itself wasn't great, especially when I compare it to the match that they had in Puerto Rico that borderline kind of stole the show in Puerto Rico, because it was so good and so unexpectedly good, and that was Io Sky's real coming out party. So I was a little bit underwhelmed and disappointed with the work rate that these two ladies had, and that in conjunction with the audience, which didn't really do any favors for this, for the major plot twist of Kairi Sane. This can't go any higher than meh. And last but not least, we have the main event of the evening, a very electric main event between Roman Reigns and LA Knight for the WWE Undisputed Universal Championship. And the crowd was alive for this. My goodness, did they love LA Knight. My goodness, did they love heckling Roman Reigns. This is where the crowd really shined. So the crowd was great in this. However, this was just the most prototypical Roman Reigns booked match ever. Literally, I feel like we've seen this story time and time again. It's a shame too, because I feel like you could have still had LA Knight lose clean while still being strong. Have it just take 3 or 4 spears to finally put away LA Knight. It would have served the same purpose that all of these interferences and a spear through the barricade ultimately did, because LA Knight did come out of this match looking stronger than he did going in my opinion. But I think we were just bored and annoyed by the fact that Roman Reigns just found a way to win the same way that he's won every single match before. It's like they're getting lazy with the writing with regards to Roman Reigns matches. There are so many ways where you can still have Roman Reigns walk out as the champion without just doing the same thing that you did at SummerSlam, the same thing that you did at WrestleMania, the same thing that you did at Elimination Chamber, at Royal Rumble, and every other PLE before that. The formula is getting boring and it's getting stale, and it sucks because that match, the atmosphere, was actually really, really good. The WWE just needs to get to the drawing board and find a new way to tell the narrative of the Roman Reigns storyline in his matches, because it's just the same thing for the past 2 years. Change it up. Find a different way to have Roman Reigns win. All right, that's all we're asking. Still, the match was good. The match was good, but god damn it, find a new way to have Roman Reigns win. All right, that's it. I'm done. Get out of here.